I'm Kyle Bachus. On April 28th of 2020, my mom was killed as a result of someone else's negligence. It's completely changed my life and the way I practice law. If you too have felt the pain of losing a loved one and you don't know where to turn, let me be your guide on what to do next when the unthinkable happens. If your loved one is catastrophically injured or if they've been killed, in addition to confronting the reality of what's happened, there's likely to be a myriad of day-to-day challenges. They seem endless that you're going to have to be confronting. And they're different, obviously, if somebody is catastrophically injured. If somebody's catastrophically injured, the challenges are going to be different. And those challenges might be things like, how are we going to accommodate them once they come home? What are we going to do about the wage loss that's being lost? And are there short-term or long-term disability benefits that are going to help cover those? What are they going to need and how are we going to support them? If your loved one has been killed, today I want to talk with you about how to deal with the issue that's a very difficult topic but an important one, and that is, what are the issues that surround the actual remains of your loved one? The first question that you're going to deal with the remains is, where are the remains and what is the intention with respect to what is going to happen with remains? So when somebody is killed, their body is generally taken to the medical examiner's office. At the medical examiner's office, a decision is going to have to be made about whether or not there's going to be an autopsy. Now, the medical examiner is a government employee. It's a public office. It's the coroner's office. And the medical examiner's office is going to make a decision on whether the government wants there to be an autopsy. And if there is, there's no expense to the family whatsoever. The police may be ordering an autopsy as part of their investigation if there's any question about what the cause of death was, because the medical examiner, their obligation is to create the death certificate that's going to list what the cause of death is. If the government elects not to do an autopsy because they feel like they don't need that for their investigation, you can still have an autopsy performed. And that may be at an expense to the family or maybe not, but you can ask the medical examiner to go ahead and do an autopsy. They may agree at no cost. They may say they're willing to do it, but there is going to be a fee, or they may tell you that they don't have the time or the resources to do the autopsy if it's not ordered by the police. Even then, even if the medical examiner says they don't have the time or resources to do the autopsy, you can still go out and get an autopsy done. There are resources where you can pay for a private autopsy by a different medical examiner. You can try to call other medical examiners around the county, or you can go to websites that list out actually private medical examiners who will do private autopsies. Now, there will be an expense for the family, but it's important for the family to understand that you have this limited time frame where you have to make a decision about whether you're going to go forward with a private autopsy or not. And if you don't, you're going to lose that opportunity, likely permanently. Because the next step is, from the medical examiner's office, the remains are going to be transferred to a funeral home. And at the funeral home, they're going to take action. They're either going to do a cremation or they're going to do an embalmment, which can impact some of the autopsy results. And so you're going to want to make that decision before the remains are transferred to a funeral home. With respect to a funeral home, of course, there's expenses associated with either a cremation or a burial. And it's important for you to know, and I've talked about in other videos, victims' compensation funds. Those funds may be available to pay for your funeral. In addition, if your family member was in the military actually has a burial cremation program for anybody who actively served in the military and who had an honorable discharge. You're entitled to have the military pay for burial and cremation at burial locations that you can utilize as a former military member. And so these are all things that you're going to want to consider when you're dealing with the remains.